critique and insolvency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good.
Cool. There are three reasons we've already won this round. First is the pros of evidence which indicates the collapse of the nation state is inevitable. Our arguments about bare life prove that the nation state is only capable of inflicting death because once people are put outside the law, it means there's unending wars like the First World Wars. And the fact that we are in the constant mode of the war on terror proves nation backlash. Our pros indicates evidence that means the state is bound to disappear. The only question is whether the queen to let it die. All of our arguments about the impact prove that it's only violence can only be inflicted when we go by state-based politics, which means inevitably reaction. That means the collapse of the law is inevitable. The only question is whether we let that collapse happen violently or we refuse sovereign power to itself. That is a uniqueness argument, which means they can never access their law good arguments because it will never be unique, which means there's a conceded argument, so don't allow the true error answer. The second argument is they concede the comparative reasons why we outweigh extinction. There are 6 billion people alive right now. Even if all people were to go extinct right now, 45 billion animals a year outweighs that. We need to confront anthropocentrism because to continue to allow the world to go on with continued unabated anthropocentrism is worse than letting the world die right now because that means 45 billion animals die. That's a utilitarian calculus, which means we comparatively outweigh, which is a conceded argument. The third argument is the Turner's case. Turner's case, they've not answered the thesis to critique that the law can be suspended at any time. All their arguments about the law being good assume that it is applied, but they have not answered any of our arguments about the fact that the sovereign decides when the law should be applied. I'm going to extend, when we concede the Razami phobia argument about the unmarked body, that's Ortagma, which indicates, which gives a historical example of Jose Padilla or Milwaukee, which means even though the Constitution gave them the right to due process, President Bush was able to say that the law does not apply. It's because the illusory nature of the law that it is ultimately the sovereign who decides when the law does and does not apply. Because people can always be marked bare life and put outside the law, which means the law doesn't apply with them. Their arguments assume the law is applied overall. Now go to the life outline debate. First, extinction. Yet again, we said we outweigh extinction and they can't access any of their impacts because they've not proven their acts as it leads to anything important, but that'll be on the framework debate. They say democracy solves war, but this begs the question of does it solve for the animal democracy? Democratic institutions have never done anything. Our cultural evidence indicates that it is naive to believe that democracy can ever be reformed. This also proves why the app can never solve anthropocentrism. Only the alternative can, because we've had comparative evidence indicates the law can never solve anthropocentrism. They do not have a piece of evidence indicate the law can do anything for the animal, which means even if we can solve the affirmative, it means they cannot solve any policy anthropocentrism, which empirically outweighs. The Guantanamo Bay itself proves democracy does not stop us indefinitely detaining all these things right now. They say always value life. That assumes a human perspective, not when you're literally tortured and beak-seared and castrated from the day you were born, living in perpetual concentration camp. They don't understand the life of the non-human. That is a reason we outweigh. Now the framework arguments. First, they concede the argument. Their interpretation in the 2AC was about the process of action. Our process of action or refusing law, which means even if they win the framework debate, we still get the alternative because their framework isn't even about only governmental action. But they've conceded all of our arguments why our framework has to necessarily outweigh. It has to recognize the fact that we are in the debate space right now. They can advocate for the affirmative. They cannot have any of their government education good or fairness claims because they only have to prove that their activism actually leads to productive action. They have not done that, which means they can get access to the affirmative because they have no reason that their speech actually results in anything. You should hold them to a 1AC activism claim, which means they should have been defended in the first place, which proves it's not unfair. We just have to recognize that our interpretation of the world is about competing intellectual advocacies as individuals right now, but we outweigh. They have no impact on any of their models, but our DECA evidence indicates we have to confront power relations in every single day of life by forcing people in this room to confront anthropocentric policies. That means that people could possibly in this round change to being vegan or changing to their anthropocentric policy, which inherently outweighs. You can screw their fairness claims. It means that even if it's a little less fair, we actually can solve death and life. But also it's not fair because they can see the fact that they can actually get policy options as long as they prove activism outweighs. That is actually more educational because you can't just bypass the whole government process and say fiat solves. That is a bad form of learning about education. You can still have clash, but you can still prove our arguments. Now they say they cannot turn our frame because they go into anthropocentric lines. Now the permutation debate, the permutation can never solve because it operates within the law. Alternatives about refusing sovereign power and saying that we can never interact with the law because the law as it exists right now is after a system that is based on bare and good life. That means it can never solve. Alternatives is all about refusing to operate the law. Our pins and pinfire evidence indicates the law only exists because we recognize that it means also disengaging law is a better thing. They say institutions are, yet again, the government isn't the only institution, and their framework is the one that forces it to only be about the government institution, which is a bad debate. We are an organization right now, which means we solve their argument. We work through organizations like this debate space and try to solve any possibility of this. Now they say law good arguments. We are different from John Yoo because we say the law is flexible, thus don't use the law. John Yoo says law is flexible, thus let's exploit the law. That is a categorical difference. They say hierarchies between bare and good life. We say those hierarchies are bad. That's why we refuse to acknowledge those hierarchies exist in the first place, which means they can't ever access any possibility of argument. The orientation, yet again, can never be solved. They are not Islamophobia. They're trying to use the law to solve Islamophobia, but obviously that cannot work. The alternative has to operate outside the law. But powers have been taken as soon as we subtract yourself from the system, it leads to Janda and Opera. The perfect arguments are irrelevant. We are actually being surrounded. We believe everything. They have not in the 1 and C. We did not have any performative contradictions. It's not inauthentic. It's actually more inauthentic to vote affirmative and the percentage because they are not actually being the state cannot get rid of claim for the animal, which proves it's impossible now. Also, all of our arguments are critiques of democracy, which prove all the democracy impacts are suspect because our cultural evidence indicates democracy and authoritarianism are the same thing. Now to solve the urban framing issue, the government wants this. The government wants to maintain detention policies. They are right that the winner didn't explicitly respond to the Stinson evidence, but Hernandez, Lopez, and Chow cards are more than sufficient to answer this. Public and government repression has forced Obama to stop looking for sites to relocate them, and the government as a whole, i.e. the entire sovereign, does have an interest in maintaining the indefinite detention, so they'll use any opportunity to redefinition it can. They say that the text of the plan, they can only guarantee that those particular individuals cannot be detained. Our 1C Chow card literally takes this language and says the government can redefine what being held at Guantanamo consists of. Here's a really important quote. Alternatively, as the government distinguishes Messi, the Canadian petition were no longer being detained, but simply excluded from the U.S. This is proving why the law is inoperative and never will. Fiat can obviously not solve this argument because they can only fiat that the plan passes, not that they actually go home. The immigration law argument, the CX and 1R established that the plan cannot overcome immigration law. They proves that even a higher propensity reinterpretation of plan text, we don't need to re-explain. Their arguments prove that Obama could always justify an immigration law. Our evidence are comparative than saying that he can justify not sending them because he has plenary powers over immigration, which proves the law is inoperative.
750.
I'm sorry?
750.
Thank you.
Makes sense.